So, hello. I am now here at the seemingly restaurant at the end of the universe, or end of space and time and
For the
stuff. Oh,
18th time, I have no money for your fund.
Show some pity. At least lend us a cigarette.
Ahem. I believe we got company.
Ah. Miss, could you perhaps spare a few dollars for the Joe Gould Fund?
right. These guys might not be familiar to everyone, but over here, as you can see, Joseph Mitchell, and here is the ever elusive bum, Joe Gould. Yeah, there's really no way to just yeah, not to put a too fine point on it, but yeah, he lived a bum and he died a bum, and he can speak to seagulls.
Hello. My name is Joseph Ferdinand Gould. I am graduate of Harvard Magna Cum Difficultate and chairman of the board of Wheel and Woe Incorporated. In exchange for a drink, I'll recite a poem, deliver a lecture, argue a point, or take off my shoes and imitate a seagull. I prefer gin, but beer will do.
I've been hearing a lot about you lately.
My reputation precedes me.
Reputation notwithstanding, you, sir, may keep your shoes on. Thank you very much. So, yeah, I think this is the biggest example of it yet in the games. There's this, well, some kind of wall of text. The game developer, Dave Gilbert, refers to it in the in-game commentary, which is not the commentary I'm doing, to it as info dump, and that is not altogether desirable. Well, me personally, I've played a lot of Infinity Engine games, you know, BioWare and stuff, so I frankly don't mind in the slightest. So, well, just fair warning, this is going to be a lot of dialogue, and it's going to take some time. But yeah, if you hate that kind of thing, fair warning. If you like it, you are in for. If you like that kind of thing, you are definitely in for a treat. Nearly failed to say that. Words escape me sometimes.
I saw your portrait in the Minetta.
The Minetta. Yes, I'm quite famous there, you know.
I gathered.
It's all thanks to Mitchell, of course. The Joe Gould Fund filled its coffers nicely when he wrote his article.
What are you doing here?
I don't quite know myself. We've all got to be someplace. As I understand it, I was mentally linked to my old friend, the Countess. I wish I'd known. It explains everything that my work was trying to prove.
Your work.
I have had many callings. I studied the seagulls of the world and learned their language. I spent months measuring the heads of 1,000 Chippewa Indians. But before I died, I was putting to paper the most important literary work known to man, the oral history of our time. It was a compilation of the conversations of the city, overheard in bars, subways, street corners, and diners. Put together and studied properly, it would have revolutionized everything.
How would it have revolutionized everything?
We were all connected, every single one of us. But how? Think of the ramifications if we found out.
It sounds like quite an undertaking.
It was my life's work.
How did you know the Countess?
We met in a diner like this one. We'd often spend a week or two walking along the docks to discuss seagulls. She had many interesting theories on seagull linguistics. Then, one day, she disappeared. But a link had already formed between us. It's everything my oral history was trying to prove, that we were all linked.
Seagull linguistics. Roll that around in your mouth for a while, okay? Is it? Wow. I'm dumbfounded.
The Countess is killing people.
Murder? No. No, I refuse to believe that. She couldn't hurt a fly.
Still, she kind of has. She's gone off the rocker, boy.
Why is she called the Countess?
That's what she chooses to call herself. Far be it for me to tell her otherwise.
The name doesn't seem strange to you?
When you lived a life like mine, you take people at face value. Who cares about names? I once knew another fellow without a name. Called himself the Deacon.
Ooh, now, the Deacon, if you remember from something like 3 hours and a half back, that is sort of the main antagonist in Blackwell Legacy. Well, I mean, I say antagonist, most like the Great Big Menace, who turned out to be a cowardly alcoholic. Because I don't know. Yeah, so he is the Deacon, that is. He is possibly the weakest computer or video game villain I have ever seen. But yeah, we helped him to, well, depart from this world would probably be a diplomatic way of putting it. But back to this game.
The Deacon? You knew the Deacon.
Oh yes, he was this gloomy career drunk. One summer night while sitting in a doorway of the Bowery, he caught the scent of sulfur. He looked up and saw the devil himself standing over him. Since that night he believed he lost his soul. Not the most charitable drinking companion, if I may say so.
No, he wouldn't be.
You knew him?
Sort of.
Fancy that.
What's your connection to Joseph Mitchell?
Ah, Mitchell, my benefactor. He made me quite famous, you know. But my goodwill only extends so far.
Why's that?
A cigarette. He has them. He won't give me one. It's demeaning to have to beg for one measly cigarette.
You want a cigarette?
Yes, I want a cigarette. It's a disgrace that I should have to beg for one.
So yeah, that cigarette. That is going to be pretty much the main thing for this part of the game. But I will show by doing, lead by example instead.
I'd like to read the oral history.
And I'd like you to, but I'm afraid it belongs to the ages now.
There was also the problem of it never existing in the first place.
Of course it existed, only not on paper. It was over 3 million words, 3 times the size of the Holy Bible. The work transcended mere parchment and ink.
What about those essays you published in the Dial?
A passing fancy, nothing more.
You wrote essays?
For the now defunct Dial magazine. I still have the originals. Do you want to see?
Yeah, we need those essays. Crazy as it sounds, we
I'd like to see that
want them.
essay.
Here you go.
It appears to be an essay about insanity, but the handwriting is so awful I can barely make it out. Just as well. I don't have time to read all this stuff.
Yeah, probably good for our sanity as well that we can't read what's on the paper.
I think
But
we'll miss this.
a paper clip is something we will need. Actually,
Here you go.
Always glad to share.
okay. Guess what? Now we gotta do the same with Joseph Mitchell.
Hello. You're Joseph Mitchell, aren't you?
I believe you have the better of me, Miss
Blackwell. Rosangela Blackwell.
Blackwell, huh? I might have known.
And yes, this is another great big info dump and wall of text, so let's just wade right in.
You met my auntie.
Your auntie, yes. I do see a slight resemblance. I did warn her to leave well enough alone, but she was determined. Let's hope that you can do some good here.
What are you doing here?
We are echoes, leftovers, if you will. We were linked to the Countess when we were alive. When we died, part of ourselves got trapped here.
So you're not a ghost?
Not fully. I'm not sure what I am. I remember living, I remember dying, but I don't feel like Joseph Mitchell. All I know is that when I thought of death, an eternity with Joe Gould was the last thing on my mind.
You know, I second that. I also, when I think of death, I too do not think about an eternity with Joe Gould. Well, I guess that's a given though.
What is your connection to the Countess?
I don't know. I never met the woman. Joe Gould was the one who knew her. He had a special bond with her, apparently. But somehow, he passed it on to me when he died. Next thing I knew, I was murdering people by writing about them. There was no choice. I had to stop writing.
Because adventure game logic. Never question the adventure game logic, guys.
I studied some of your work in journalism school.
Now that's just foolish. I was a relic, even before I died. The city I wrote about has long since evolved and changed into something completely different. But that's New York City, isn't it? Wouldn't be New York if it stayed the same year to year.
I'm sorry you had to stop writing.
So am I. But what else could I do? Let innocent people die? No, I don't regret the choice I made. Not for one moment.
Did you know Charles Meltzer?
Yes, I did. He worked at the New Yorker back in the late 70s. He would come into my office and ask about the old days, and I was happy to tell him. I knew he would never cut it as a reporter, but he had a very keen, analytical mind. I almost forgot all about him, but it appeared a link formed between us, nonetheless. When I died, my connection to the Countess passed on to him.
Charles Meltzer is using the Countess to kill people.
By accident?
No, on purpose. He sent her after me.
Now, that's a shame. I'm aware that through my actions I killed a few people, but I could forgive myself for it, since I was unaware of what I was doing. But many times I thought to myself, I have a weapon, it's untraceable, nobody knows about it. I could use it, but I did not. I was tempted, but I did not. Not once. You have to stop Charles. Break this link, destroy this place. No more innocents should have to die.
How do I break this link?
I wish I knew. I'm afraid all this is a bit beyond me.
Well, yes, it will involve scoring that cigarette. Yes, I just said that.
Why did you write about Joe Gould?
He's a fascinating man. Intolerable company, but fascinating. He exemplified everything about New York at the time. Its artistic expression, its frustration, its joy and heartbreak. His oral history, or the idea of it, energized the work of dozens of writers and intellectuals. But the more I got to know him, the less I wanted to be around him.
Really now?
Did you ever read Joe Gould's oral history?
That, it never existed. Or if it did, Mr. Gould never shared it with anyone, which amounts to the same thing.
You know why I never wrote it down. People would have died.
You didn't stop telling people you were writing it, did you?
What could I say? The truth? They would have chucked me in a loony bin.
Why don't you give him a cigarette?
When you give that man a cigarette or a drink, he likes to talk. And the only subject Joe Gould likes to talk about, at length, is Joe Gould. And the only person for him to talk to is me. So, I do not give him a cigarette.
Yeah. I'm tempted to do number 2, but yeah, tell him to speak to Gould, but it won't do anything. So I'll just cut the chat right
Thanks
here.
for talking, Mr. Mitchell. I'll see what I can do.
Thank you, Miss Blackwell.